When thinking of how seasons are represented in media, one would be forgiven for having their mind initially drift with the snowflakes towards winter. Hallmark makes about 300 winter-themed movies a year, and St. Nick's cultural staying power continues to thrive in song, movies, and literature, despite an output that almost propels its own repetition and monotony. However, audiences still eat them up. Elf still plays on TV screens across the world every December. By October 1st, the Christmas music begins playing on the radio. But I, for one, am sick of winter's dogmatic control over media as the only season with significance. I love a good winter movie snuggled up under a blanket, but the season is only so long, and I crave the equivalent, comforting experience of consuming in-season media beyond the coldest month of the year. I believe the reason for winter's unwavering control over the cultural media landscape comes in part from what it has come to represent, and how it is used so effectively. Winter is beautiful, and Christmas movies always have a narrative arc that reflects themes of gratitude, love, and appreciation. There's a clearly defined aesthetic and set of ideas that comes with the movie contextualized in winter, specifically around Christmas. I argue that autumn is a season that should rival winter in its dominance over media representation for the same reasons winter itself has remained so popular. Aesthetics, theming, and their combination making for a bountiful media consumption experience. To prove this, questions have to be answered. How is fall represented in media? How is it utilized thematically and narratively, as well as aesthetically in different media forms? What associations has it created with the season? What does autumn sound like, read like, look like? Autumn has such a beautiful and distinct aesthetic that one cannot help but feel cozy, enveloped in the rusty oranges that begin to dot the trees. And I think it's time we, as a species, start to appreciate the unique ways in which the season itself is represented and used in media to elicit emotion and generate atmosphere just as impactful as those cursed Christmas flicks. In media representation, I see three general shades that fall comes in. Persephone and Hades were conjured by ancient Greeks to explicate the changing seasons. Persephone would return to the gods from Hades' domain during the summer and spring, bringing with her the beauty of blossoming nature, and would be required to reside in hell during the colder months. This story introduces one of the main associations made with fall as it is utilized within media: decay, death, and loss. While the leaves may begin as a brilliant orange, there is no denying their crunch under your boot a couple months later, when the sky is more overcast, rain pours, and a darkness consumes a young autumn's luminosity. Although the grayer months of late autumn still have plenty to offer in terms of coziness and atmosphere, there is no denying the sheer beauty of early fall. The brilliant orange leaves coruscate with a unique glow, and alongside this warm gleam is a bountiful harvest of dense and hearty vegetables. There's a time before the world freezes over where the sun's remaining heat is translated into nature's hue. This is the other association with fall: bounty, harvest, plenitude, and comfort. Spending time with family over Thanksgiving is all one needs to be reminded of how this season is just as rightly associated with life and comfort as it is with death and decay. Lastly, these opposing feelings can blend in the melancholic association of fall and the twilight years, the final few months of life before it all goes dark. Fall is thus a moment of reflection, a time to appreciate all that life is offered while one still can. Fall is a beautiful, tragic, comforting wake-up call that alerts one to the things in life that really matter: friends and family, connection, nature. Saying goodbye to the things that make you warm is difficult, but at the same time, necessary and beautiful. With these symbolic associations, the season can take on a representational value within a given text. However, there are also just the undeniable aesthetics of fall that different media takes advantage of for purely aesthetic purposes or to generate an atmosphere. Lastly, I find that there is media that doesn't necessarily incorporate fall as a core element of its design, whether that be in narrative or aesthetics, but in their unique construction are perfectly suited for the season, and in being so, can help illuminate the common elements used, themes constructed around, and feelings evoked in different representations of autumn. Beginning with the latter, music is one of those media texts that may not mention the literal words "I love the fall" in every autumn-associated song, but there are too many singles that are clearly coded as suiting the crisp autumn air from their stylistic elements. From noting popular fall songs and their similarities, we can start to parse what the season sounds like, how it's represented in music, and how these representations match other associations autumn has developed in other media texts. The Let's Talk Music subreddit has to be the perfect place to get genuine opinions on music, right? certainly not a risky venture at all. Regardless, visiting popular music sites and forums alongside Spotify's curated fall playlists have proven some albums are more associated with the fall season than others. Consistently, I saw work by the Fleet Foxes, Bon Iver, Nick Drake, and Elliott Smith appear as people's top choices for fall musicians. These artists share a mellow tone while existing on a range of folkiness, which in itself has been revealed to be the genre that embodies autismal music's most common traits. An earthy, natural theme exists in these musicians, a sense of intimacy unique to the slower months of the year where one should take the time to reflect on the changes around them. This feeling of warmth, gentleness, and comfort aligns with our thematic through lines. Fall is a time of bounty and harvest, and the rural, intimate nature to these artists' work evoke the same warmth one feels at the numerous family gatherings happening throughout the season. A somber tone and slower pace also matches the newfound desire to feel warm and the desperation to slow down. We're in the twilight years now. We don't need to rush. I would much rather spend time with those that I love inside, where it's warm, and view the cold, beautiful, dying world with appreciation. All with a Nick Drake backing track. In terms of specifics, I'm admittedly a bit out of my element when it comes to music theory and analyzing audio as a text, but I can at least do research. Arts audio producer Eugene Lyons notes that when listening to any given autumn song, you'll almost never hear more than the four essentials: bass, drums, guitar and keys, or vocals. In autismal music, there's a seeming slowness in tempo, dullness in timbre, and sparsity in instrumentation that reflects the broad associations one has with the season: reflection, peace, warmth, the twilight years. Autismal music is melancholic and gentle, with an emphasis on intimacy that speaks to the warmth one feels spending time with loved ones while it starts to freeze outdoors. The instruments that are present are appropriately earthy, rustic, and intimate. Acoustic guitars serenade over smooth indie voices. Jazz takes on a new life in the fall, as one can start to hear the individual crackles in a comfortably numbing French horn and swaddle up in the brassy, relaxing tempos. Autismal music sounds dense, concrete, and supportive. It lulls you into a time of gentle reflection. When autismal music does perk up, however, it is often performed with a certain quaint pluckiness to the instrumentation. I personally find instrumentals from films like Lady Bird and The Grand Budapest Hotel to be especially representative of this more energetic fall sound. There's also video game music, which, like instrumentals in film, broadly seem to opt for slightly faster tempos and higher timbres. This gives the comfortably lethargic sounds of slow jazz and intimate folk a bit of life, the sonic equivalent of bright orange leaves appearing almost suddenly on your favorite tree, which is suitable for the activities these media facilitate. Rather than more passively listening to a relaxing album, these songs in film and games are atmospheric and supportive of a greater experience, and thus work to engage audiences into the primary element of that media experience. Whereas specific fall albums capture the season's gentleness, I find instrumentals from other media broadly follow a slightly more energetic sound to help engage users further. Fall music has helped illuminate the common narrative associations and symbolic elements of the season. But more than sound, fall is undoubtedly most popular for its visual representation in different media. Here we reach a critical juncture. Like Christmas films, I feel that there are the movies that are inherently fall because of the way they incorporate the themes, values, and events associated with the season into its narrative and thematic goals. In other words, fall was written into some movies for more than just the vibe, whereas for others, the season does act more as set dressing for atmospheric purposes. In other words, it's the difference between Frosty the Snowman and Die Hard, besides the stark difference in quantity of guns in each film. Frosty is a literal character and symbol associated with Christmas and the winter season that uses the holiday as a framing device for the film's themes and story's message. The story works in service of the season and the holiday's aims, whereas Die Hard weaponizes Christmas to add flair to its own visuals, world, and atmosphere. Now, both are associated with Christmas and have become winter staples. I wonder if there is not a similar dynamic with fall's visual representation in media, especially considering its simultaneous associations with bounty and decay. Let me explain. For some of these purely aesthetic autumn incorporations, we can look to what video games have determined are the season's most crucial visuals to highlight through stylization. Some of my favorite autumn areas in video games are typically doused in overly saturated leaves, like Bellchime Trail in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which almost blinds players with warm hues. Goldleaf Galaxy and Maple Treeway similarly takes advantage of the warm color palette commonly associated with the season, and when paired with the aforementioned plucky and upbeat autumn music, makes for levels that, despite taking place in the fall, are filled with life and energy. But if I really want to sink into that cozy autumn feeling, I want a world to exist in. Fall in Animal Crossing is a time I wish I could live in for eons for the unique elements it employs only during the fall season. According to the Animal Crossing wiki, in New Horizons, fall consists of a mixture of clear, sunny days and some patches of rain. By November 26, snow will begin to fall, marking the beginning of winter. In New Leaf, thunderstorms will dissipate around September, giving way for regular rain. In September, trees will begin to turn from bright green to a dull, musky green. In October, the 17th in New Leaf, trees will then turn a bright orange-brown color. Grass follows the same color pattern as trees. By the end of the season, the ground, trees, and clover all change to a dull brown color. Dandelions will disappear until next summer. Meaning, one can appreciate all the physical and visual changes that comes with fall without actually experiencing the absolutely frigid air produced from an incoming winter. I love these infinitely autismal worlds. Ghost of Tsushima is especially strong in fall imagery, and if I had to choose a single region to call home in Hyrule, it would have to be Akkala. With its mixture of burgundy and orange leaves, the grass slightly duller and muddier than Central Hyrule Field, Akkala feels like fall without ever explicitly stating it as such. From this, the common elements of fall visuals become more clear. Warm colors on a range of saturation, with the later months becoming grayer and representing the decaying aspect of the season, whereas earlier months maintain the bright energy from the summer. Finally, one cannot forget the entire category of media that use Halloween and spooky aesthetics that makes them feel perfectly ripe for the fall. I find this aesthetic nicely overlaps with the later months of the season as well, where the world is truly going darker, and decay can be used in a spooky setting to create a terrifying atmosphere rather than a reflective one. The Batman Arkham games demand a replay from me every autumn for this reason. I want to be dark and moody just like the Gotham Knight himself to match the season's turn towards rot. The Luigi's Mansion series is a more lighthearted version of the horror that underscores autumn, and I think some players wish they could forget Boo's Haunted Mansion. This could be biased, but I find that film most often incorporates the season uniquely into its visuals to create an atmosphere appropriate for the story being told and to inform the story itself. Fantastic Mr. Fox and Dead Poet Society have narratives quite literally framed by the season. Mr. Fox comes into conflict with the apple farmers who dominate his land for its bountiful harvest, and the Dead Poets attend a private university, situating the narrative into an academic calendar that necessitates the story's placement in the fall. These films take place in autumn, and their stories are literally affected by the timing of the season. However, Dead Poet Society goes a step further. When the narrative takes its dramatic turn, autumn's warmth is overshadowed by a blistering winter chill, cold hues, and the imagery of decay that replaced once beautiful and plentiful depictions of friends learning to grow together. For the Dead Poets, fall is not just an aesthetic backdrop, but a framing device that is simultaneously representative of the character's genuine growth. Neil and Todd both go on journeys of self-discovery and development, where they learn what they truly care about in life, reflect on their present experiences, and determine how to change from this reflection. It's the trajectory of the season mapped to a narrative arc, and when the story is displayed with purposeful utilization of the season's unique aesthetics, it makes for a film that is completely and utterly fall. Furthermore, Mr. Fox continues to illuminate the difference between a movie giving off fall vibes and a film truly being in season, based on how core the season is to the overall media experience. Although fall isn't necessarily name-dropped in this movie, the season could be visually evoked to represent Mr. Fox's changing character. The cinematography is also built around foundational fall color palettes and motifs. Oak trees that Mr. Fox lives in and views as a sign of power, apple cider that the main antagonist makes, and the beautiful colors are all aspects of the story and cinematography that would make this movie impossible without the season itself. Meanwhile, some films are still able to incorporate the look uniquely in order to achieve their narrative aims. Far From Heaven presents a fantasy suburbia because of how beautiful the autumn is, where it's always 65 degrees with a slight chill, the leaves are a painter's palette of warm hues, and the fashion is just as aesthetic as the nature that motivates the change from worn-out sneakers to wool sweaters. However, False coziness is purposefully utilized to paint a rosy picture of America that is then subverted for the film to achieve its thematic aims. Lead character Kathy Whitaker is betrayed by her well-dressed neighbors for crossing racial boundaries in her relationship with Raymond, only after her husband is revealed to be cheating on her with another man. These conflicts are only made more damning of the utopia that surrounds them because of how beautifully it is presented. Much like the season itself, Far From Heaven is a dual piece, invoking horror in its dramatic terms, but beauty and warmth in its visual construction. Lastly, there's the classics, or films that may perform both roles, but more than anything, are made directly for the season itself. These are your Great Pumpkin Charlie Browns, your Halloween-themed movies and stories. Texts that are created to be ingested during the fall season and make direct acknowledgement of this. I'm thinking of the marketing of specific horror films, which don't directly associate themselves with fall, but are knowingly promoted alongside its associated season and topical events like Halloween. Funnily enough, Halloween is a fantastic example of this type of film. Not only does it incorporate spooky aesthetics into its cinematography, but it bakes the season and Halloween directly into its narrative construction. This was a film made for the holiday, as much as Charlie Brown was meant to be watched on Thanksgiving. I find these to be some of the most pure encapsulations of the season, as even when they're horrific, these texts are still wholly indebted to and clearly in love with the season and all it has come to represent. Fall is beautiful because of its contradiction. Maple Treeway and Luigi's Mansion are both perfect tracks to race on. I can delight in Fantastic Mr. Fox's, well, fantastic fall aesthetics, just as much as the Royal Tenenbaums has a deceptively comfy warm glow. Upbeat, quick tracks in games and movies, which also have the haunting Halloween theme beats, are energizing, while the dense brass and smooth jazz lulls me into a peaceful midday nap. After all, it's cold and getting dark. I think it's time we all get our favorite fall snacks and take our personal favorite fall flick into the purple night sky.